Lafayette today's very existence is meant to encourage socialization and to publicize student groups, both of which lead to the overarching goal of strengthening ties within the Lafayette community. So, what is a community? Raymond Williams, in his book Key Words, A Vocabulary of Culture and Society, writes that community can be the warmly persuasive word to describe an existing set of relationships, or the warmly persuasive word to describe an alternative set of relationships. What is most important, perhaps, is that unlike all other terms of social organization, state, nation, society, etc., it seems never to be used unfavorably, and never to be given any positive opposing or distinguishing term. Community, then, seems to be universally regarded as a positive, something to be encouraged as Lafayette today does. The question, then, is, if that is the case, how successful is the Lafayette today at its job? To ascertain this, we interviewed two students at Lafayette, Paige Matthew, a leader in multiple clubs who both looks at Lafayette today every release and submits events to it regularly, and Ian Cahoon, who has never opened Lafayette today a day in his life. With Paige, we began by asking about her experience reading it.
I do look at the Lafayette today almost every time it comes out. I think it's a source of great information in terms of events that are happening on campus. I also look for that bottom section that kind of shares the accomplishments of people within the community.
She, in other words, is reading Lafayette today to remain in the know, to not miss events and thus remain out of the loop. She is, basically, reading Lafayette today to secure her spot in the community by gaining knowledge of what David Bartholomew, in his essay Inventing the University, would define as a commonplace, or a culturally or institutionally authorized concept or statement that carries with it its own necessary elaboration. The clubs and their events become commonplaces through the Lafayette today. If the newsletter is read, then the student remains aware of current commonplaces. Of course, when it is not, that student does not gain the knowledge he would otherwise have acquired. In Ian's case, he chooses not to read Lafayette today because
it typically contains a lot of information, but sometimes some of the information just isn't, particularly relevant to me.
Essentially, though he knows he is missing knowledge of commonplaces, he feels that the commonplaces are not relevant to him. So, how often do you attend social events, and would you think you'd attend more if you read Lafayette today?
Honestly, with my major as a chemical engineer, I'm just pretty busy. I really doubt I would, even if I did read Lafayette today.
It depends on the event. I don't usually go to individual club events. However, I have gone to programs that are more targeted towards the wider community, and so I will often go to those events.
Paige also said this about attendance at her own events. And have you found that submitting events to Lafayette today is a helpful way to get attendance at your events?
I would say somewhat. I think that when it's promoting, I think it depends on the event. I've definitely gone to events that have been promoted in Lafayette today, but I wouldn't say that our Film Society events have been greatly impacted by the Lafayette Today advertising.
If they are both aligned in this, then perhaps Lafayette today is not as successful as it might want to be. However, there is a critical aspect of Lafayette today thus far that is somewhat overlooked. It does not act alone. So what alternative means do you use to find out what's going on campus?
So typically I'll just talk with my friends or the crew team, which I'm on, and just kind of get my information through them.
So generally just kind of word of mouth?
Yeah, pretty much.
I would say it's one of my main sources. As someone who's also a part of the newspaper, I often read that for information about what's going on campus. And then because I'm a club leader, I'm also on our campus itself as a platform to kind of see what events are going on.
Joseph Harris, in his essay, The Idea of Community in the Study of Writing, discusses two sides of community: interpretive communities, or a loose, dispersed network of individuals who share certain habits of mind, and speech communities, or an actual group of speakers living in a particular place and time. The Lafayette today might seem to work more towards speech community. It does, after all, go out to a group of people living in the same area at the same time. However, in practice, and especially because of its digital nature, it really works more towards the interpretive community. Both Paige and Ian received Lafayette Today in completely different places, despite the close proximity, and both approach it with a totally different mindset. Yet they are connected by the loose, dispersed network of students, and they do share certain habits of mind, even if reading Lafayette Today is not one of them. Whereas Lafayette Today does factor into the speech community is in its collaboration with word-of-mouth literacy, an event that could really only occur within a speech community and which directly relies on information sources like Lafayette Today to function. Harris, speaking on Raymond Williams' text, writes in his own that Williams is also hinting at the extraordinary rhetorical power one can gain through speaking of community. It is a concept both seductive and powerful, one that offers us a view of shared purpose and effort, and that also makes a claim on us that is hard to resist. For like the pronoun we, community can be used in such a way that it invokes what it seems merely to describe. The writer says to his reader, "We are part of a certain community, they are not," and, if the reader accepts, the statement is true. The creators of Lafayette Today are that writer, offering students a chance to ingratiate themselves further into the community of Lafayette and the specific communities of the student group. The question, then, is not whether Lafayette Today seeks to tap into this extraordinary rhetorical power, it seems quite clear that it does, but, as stated earlier, how successfully it goes about it. To conclude the interviews, we asked both Paige and Ian what they would change about Lafayette Today. Here's what they said.
I liked when the Lafayette Today was more frequent. I mean, it was nice to get a little update about things that were happening on campus daily, and it was also, I think, more useful as a club, because I feel like people are more willing to go to an event if it's promoted more frequently. The consistency of being reminded that these events are happening really helps build more community at these events.
I think maybe trimming it down could be useful because it usually is quite long. And also being more descriptive in the headers. So if there's something important, making sure that it's like highlighted so that it's obvious that that's what the email is about.
These answers, aligning almost perfectly with our survey results, point to two key aspects: a clearer newsletter, where one could better look for the commonplaces relevant to them, and a more frequent release that more consistently publicizes clubs and their events. Basically, then, the Lafayette Today informs its readers of the commonplaces it feels they need to know, but in a fashion that discourages readership and severely limits the publicity it would need to truly establish the clubs and their events as commonplaces, rather than passing mentions in one or two newsletters.
In the past, I haven't had any problems.